everybody. Today we are going to continue our portrait lessons by talking about and drawing the profile view of the human face. The profile view is when your face is completely sideways. I love the profile view. You only have to draw one half of things. You don't have to worry about symmetry. And you have some very interesting things that happen with the features. Some other nice things about drawing profiles is that if you've already done the full face view of the face, you kind of already know some of the stuff that you need for the profiles. So we're just building knowledge instead of starting from scratch, and that's kind of cool. Just like with the full face, we're going to start with basic shapes, eggs. Just like with the full face, we're going to put some measurements on those eggs to make sure that our features are positioned correctly. Because, it really doesn't matter what shape the eyes are, what shape the nose is, what shape the mouth is. But boy, does it ever matter if they're in the right place. So we're going to put those measurements once again. And then we're going to do our individual features, just like we did with full faces. Again, we're taking a complicated image and we're breaking it down into simpler parts so that you can succeed at drawing these faces. The first thing that we're going to draw, just like we did with our full faces, is an egg. Just like with our full faces, we are going to arrange it about the width of our fingers. And this time, I'm also going to put some little marks sideways for the width of our fingers, because we're going to have a part behind the egg to indicate the back of the skull, as you can see on our skull. So we're going to have one egg to show the front part of the face itself, and we're going to have a second egg that shows the back of the skull. On our drawing, we are going to set up a basic egg shape. Now the beautiful, beautiful thing about this particular view of the face, you see this right here? This is where we're going to be putting our facial features. All of this is going to change. So it does not matter if it's perfect. It really does not. One thing though that we want to do is to add to the back of our skull, almost by overlapping a second egg, to be able to have the whole shape of it. Now notice, your length that I set up, about at finger widths, is just a little bit longer than the width. If you make it too long, you have Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I don't know if everybody liked that movie. I enjoyed it, but it kind of starts to look a little alien. I have these two eggs. I'm going to check that measurement here and here to make sure that my width is a little bit shorter than my height. I'm also going to make sure that if I imagine where my center point is, notice that the back of the egg actually goes a little further down than that. Again, a lot of this is going to get covered by hair, so it's not super important, but we want to make sure that it is there. One thing that we are going to be doing this time is erasing our lines as we go. We're not going to leave our measuring lines anymore. We've learned them, we know them, and now we're going to erase as we go, which means it's very important that when you draw the egg, the eye line, the nose line, the mouth line, that you draw very lightly so that you can erase without leaving ghost marks. All right. So now that we have our egg shapes, we're going to go in and put our measuring lines just like we did on the full face. Now, if you see on our skull, we're going to start with our symmetry line. There's no symmetry that shows on this. The symmetry line is on the outside of the shape. So that means we have it already. The outside of our egg is our symmetry line. We don't have to worry about it. So we're going to break it down into eye line. Where does the eye line go? Halfway. Again, a little bit higher is okay, a little bit lower, starts looking a little weird, and we're gonna set up that eye line. After the eye line is going to be our nose line, again about halfway between the eye and the bottom of the egg, and again it's going to be about halfway, and you can see that on our skull. After our nose line, we're going to set up that mouth line. Does the mouth go halfway? No, it goes slightly higher than halfway. So you find the halfway point and scooch it up just a little bit. Now, one thing about these lines, whether you're in full face, profile, 3/4, or anywhere in between any of that, here's some things to notice. If the head is tilted up, those lines tend to change. The eye line goes a little higher, not much. The nose line definitely goes higher. The higher you go, the nose line is between the eye lines. High. And it all shifts. If you start to tilt down, more of the top of your head shows. And again, those lines will move depending on the tilt of your head. We are just being very simplified, just like we did with the full face though, so we're going to keep our halfway-ish rule. But just because the face is turning sideways doesn't mean that the lines migrate. Pupils don't migrate, and neither do measuring lines. On our skull, we are going to set up first our eye line. And again, I don't need a ruler, I don't need to measure anything out. I'm just going to eyeball where the eye line would be, but I can check to see if it's about halfway by doing my little trick with my pencil. Putting my point on the line, my fingernail on the chin, and comparing it to the top half. If they are approximately the same, again, if the top half is a little smaller, that's okay. The bottom half is a little smaller, I would suggest moving that line up. But once I've checked it, that is going to be my eye line. Next bit is going to be our nose line. And again, about halfway between the nose line and the chin, I'm going to set up a line. I'm going to check that line to see if it's about halfway. Little higher is okay. Little lower tends to be strange looking, but everyone is different. And then finally our mouth line. Find the halfway point. You can check it if you want to make sure it's halfway, but then move your mouth line up. We do not want our mouth line at the halfway point. That is too low. Now that I have my measuring line set up, and that's it, really, we are going to work on features just like with the full face. We're going to start with the eye, move our way down to the nose, and then to the lips. After we do our facial features, we'll set up our chin, jaw, our ear, our neck, and of course the hair. The ancient Egyptians liked to do their pictographs with profile views. Poor darlings though. Their faces were in profile, but the torsos were still in full face. Usually the hands were doing funny things like this. And a lot of times the hips were also in profile. This hurts. On Egyptian art, they tended to make their profiles have full face eyes. Let's see what that would look like. I got my eye shaped like an almond. I got my iris. I have my pupil. Put in my eyelid. Yay! Yay! No. That doesn't look right. So, I need to realize that the shape of the eye is going to be a little different because the face is turned. No flounder, people. So, I'm going to erase this. Earthquake. One thing that you can realize about the profile eye is in profile, your eye kind of makes a peace sign. And that peace sign is about the opening that you want of the eye. You don't want to stretch your fingers out too much, because eyelids don't do that. You can close the eye a little bit more if the person is sleepy or angry, but a nice comfortable peace sign of your fingers is about the shape and the opening, the angle of the eye that you should do. Now we're going to set up this angle so that the apex of it, the point of it, is on our eye line. We're going to have a bit of it that goes above and a bit of it that goes below. Disclaimer time. Full Faces had all kinds of measurements to make sure we knew exactly where the eye was and how big it was. It had measurements to know the width of the nose. It had measurements to know the width of the mouth. Profiles don't have as many of those nice little tricks. So we have to use our knowledge. We have to use the knowledge that we know what people look like to help us draw these. If you draw the eye and it looks too small, it probably is. Make it a little bigger. If you draw the eye and it looks too wide open, it probably is. Close it up a little bit. We have to use that knowledge to be able to draw these faces. So, please be forgiving of yourself. Draw lightly so that you can adjust as you go and realize we are learning, and that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. In fact, mistakes often let you learn new ways to do things. So, take your time with it and just give it a shot. Now, this opening of the eye, notice I set it a little back from the edge of the egg itself, and I just kind of set up that little angle. Now again, this is our eyelid set. Our eyeball would be within that, but we don't see the entire eyeball, so we do not have to draw it. All we're going to see is this little part that sticks out. Notice, because it's an eyeball, because your eyeball is round, that this has a slight curve to it. So you can set that up to indicate your front of your eyeball. Just like on the full face view, we're going to see two parts on the eyeball for our person to be able to see. And that's going to be our iris, our colored part of our eye, and our pupil, the hole in your eye. Again, don't stick anything in there. It's protected by the cornea. Now, if you look at our diagram, you can see that the cornea is a more curved bit, but the muscles of the iris are pretty flat. And through that muscle, you can see where the muscle stops to show the pupil. So we can't draw a circle iris here. We can't draw a circle pupil here. It doesn't work. Now, when setting up your iris and your pupil, imagine that it's a record. Our record, it's a little 45, it's cute. Our record would be the iris itself, and you can see the hole for the spindle of the record player would be our pupil. Now watch what happens if we take this and turn it sideways. Notice that the circle of the iris becomes an ellipse. Notice that the circle of the pupil also becomes an ellipse. Now, if you keep it going all the way to its very edge, it becomes a line. Now, we don't want to just leave the eye blank, so we're not just going to turn it that far. We need to give it some substance. So, we're going to draw our iris and our pupil at a mostly turned view as you see this record. So, our iris is going to be an ellipse, and our pupil is going to be an ellipse. On our eye shape, we're going to remember what we did with full faces, and we're going to have the bottom of our iris hit the bottom eyelid, but the top of the iris will be slightly covered by the top eyelid. Now, just like with our full face view, I am going to draw the entire ellipse. Why? Why do I draw the entire ellipse? So I can position the pupil. Again, the pupil is in the center of the iris. So I want to draw the entire iris to be able to do so. I'm going to figure out where the center of my ellipse is, and I'm going to set up my pupil in the middle of it. You can shade it in if you'd like, but make sure it's an ellipse and not a circle. Once we're done with that, we can erase the top of the iris that peeks out so that we can set up our next part of our eye, which is going to be the eyelid. On our original face, again, I'm going to set that up, have my little iris ellipse in the front of the face, my pupil in the center of that, and then I can erase the top of the iris and that eyeball I drew for that matter. I'm also going to erase the eye line that's inside the eye and clean it up just a little. I am going to leave the rest of the eye line for right now. I will need it a little bit later. Alright, now our next bit is going to be our eyelid. Here's one strange thing that I've seen students draw for the eyelid. They'll actually draw the front of the eyelid here and then draw the crease coming back. The shape is right, but the eyelid is cinching the eyeball. It's cutting into it. This person can't blink. So you have to make sure that the edge of the eyelid is actually just a little bit further out than your eyeball itself, because that eyelid has to cover the eye. Therefore, that will give you your thickness that you need. The crease, if you're drawing it, would just kind of run a little parallel to the top line and would fade out toward the back. Ooh, earthquake, sorry. And that'll give us a simplified indication of our eyelid. Again, on our main face, find where the edge of my eyeball is, slightly out from there, and then draw the crease. Our eyelashes actually stick out from our face and they curve slightly. So here on the top eyelid would be our longer eyelashes, and again, some longer, some shorter. As they come backward, they will thin out. Bottom eyelashes are the same. They curve outward, slightly downward, and they're shorter and a bit thinner and fade away a little faster. And this will be our basic eyelid and eyelash setup. On my main face, I'll put a few eyelashes kind of sticking out the front, a few down at the bottom, and I'm ready to move on to my next step. My next step is eyebrows. Here's a fun thing. Eyebrows are almost exactly like full face eyebrows, except you don't have to match a second one now. Yay! So, above your eye, giving it a little space, you are going to just kind of outline the eyebrow. Again, if you want to differentiate between a thicker and straighter eyebrow or a thinner and more arched eyebrow, you can. It's a little wider than the eye itself, just like on a full face. And if you want to sketch in the edges to make it look like it's made from hair, you absolutely can. Wasn't that easier than on the full face? Yeah, it really was. Now, here's where things start getting a little complicated. We have to adjust the egg shape to draw our nose. Now, I'm going to show a process that can help you out. Hopefully it works for you. Give it a shot and we'll go from here. For the nose, I'm going to adjust this front edge of the face to be able to draw the nose. Remember that noses are all different shapes and sizes, right? Well, again, we're being very, very simplified. So I'm going to start on my egg shape, add the eyebrow. I'm going to angle inward to the eye line and stop. Then at about a 45-degree angle, I'm going to draw a line outward, nice and straight, to the nose line. Woohoo! Bird people! Caw-caw! Have a beak. Bear with me. This does work. I am then going to take a giant knife and I'm going to chop off the tip of that beak. Whap! If you chop off not enough, the person has a very pointy nose. If you chop off too much, Voldemort. But I'm just going to chop it off. And again, if you want it a little pointier, move that line outward. If you want it a little higher up, move it a little inward. But this is going to be our basic process. Now we have to take all of these sharp edges that we did and just kind of round them out a little bit. I'm going to curve this one here, curve the one by the eyebrow. I'm going to curve right here on the nose. I'm going to curve right here on the nose. And I'm going to put a curve that's going to start to come down right here for our beginning of our mouth. That's the philtrum, that part of your nose underneath, the little cup part. And I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup now. Woohoo! We have a nose! Again, a very generic, simplified nose. So many different kinds of noses out there. But we're not finished. Our person can't smell. So we have to set up the nostril and the lobe of the nostril right here to finish up our nose. Luckily, they're just like the full face views. Little fish hook here, little parenthesis, and you have a nose. Our next facial feature is going to be the mouth. The mouth is not very difficult to do, but give yourself some opportunity to adjust it. It's very easy to make things too tiny, too pointed, and your lips can look strange if you do so. Again, we don't have measurements for all of this, so you want to be able to draw lightly so you can adjust. But try this technique. From my nose, about the center of the nostril, they watched up again and they started crying at the first part of it. I'm going to draw a little snot line coming down the front right here. Then I'm going to use that to set up my lip. My top lip is going to curve to that little dotted line, not further out, to that dotted line, and then back to the mouth line. From there, I'll curve out again and then back in. The shape is kind of like a little bird flying in the distance that you did on landscapes when you were a kid. And you turn that sideways. Try not to give them the McDonald's arches, because that will make your person look a bit strange. Now, I'm going to clean up a little bit. Clean up my mouth line. Clean up my egg. Don't need this mouth line anymore. I can clean this part. And I have the outer shape of my mouth. But I need to show our opening. Now our opening just kind of curves a little further back. And you'll set up a top lip with a slight curve to it as well. If you want the indication of lipstick, you can add the bottom line. If you want to avoid lipstick, just leave that bottom line off. When setting up your lips, the lines of your lips are going to come from those outermost points. Do not set them up from those inner curves. This is what happens when little kids get hold of their mom's makeup, or parrotfish. Parrotfish, they have kind of a mouth like this, but not so much human. Unless you're drawing clowns, I guess you could. All right. Now, on this profile view, we have to draw something that we haven't really messed with on the full face view. Something new. We have to set up a chin. Your chin sticks out from your egg shape. And again, lots of different kinds of chins in the world. One thing that I suggest though is don't let it go out past your mouth, and you should be okay. On my face, I'm going to just curve and add a little chin down at the bottom. Be willing to adjust. If you would like to trim the chin to give a little bit more of a delicate face, you could. If you want to add a very squared off jaw, you could. If you wanted to add a bigger chin, absolutely okay. You just want to give yourself some willingness to adjust it to your aesthetic. Now I'm going to erase the bottom of my egg. Notice my chin went beyond that. That's okay. It's all right. So that I can set up my next parts of my face. I'm going to start off next with the ear. Do you remember where our measurements were for our ear on our full face? We took our fingers and went backwards from our eye line. We found the top of our ears. From a nose line, we found the bottom of our ears. Just because we turn sideways does not mean that that changes. Our eye line here, our nose line here, is where we're going to set up our ear. I'm going to set it up where, I don't know if you can see this, but this is where my original eggs met. I'm going to set up my ear right here. It's very similar to what we did to the full face, just a little bit wider. Very similar little details on the inside, and that's it. Our next thing that we have to do is to set up a jawline. Pencils down, feel your jawline. This is your bone in here. This is your skull. If you go from your chin and feel along your bone line, you might notice it's very, very straight. Then as you get to the back of your jaw, there's a little curve that happens at the end. And if you keep going from that curve, there's your ear. But there's not a line right here. So we're not going to connect it all the way because we're not drawing a mask. So we're going to draw our angle back of our jaw, slightly curve up on the back of it, point to our ear, and stop it. So from our chin, again, angle back, let it point to our ear, blam, and stop our jaw. So from about the middle of the jaw, right here, you're going to have just a little slope back. From behind the egg, you're going to curve down from the skull, and again, little slope back. Don't make their neck too skinny. Don't go all the way to the edge of the paper. Giraffe people. And be willing to adjust so that you like the look of your neck. And you have a very bald person. Can we leave them bald, Miss Butter? No, still not yet. But we are going to still draw a very, very simplified hair. So, do you remember where we draw our hair? We draw it from our hairline. We draw the shape of it. And we draw the ends of it. So that you have a suggestion of a style. Not every hair, we're not shading, we're not coloring. We're just putting a suggested style here. just like with our full face, first thing we have to do is set up a hairline. About halfway between the eyebrow and the top of the head, you put a little mark. From there, you're going to curve backward and then to in front of the ear. Everybody has a little bit of hair in front of their ears. Mine is white. Then I'd like you to check something out. Take your finger and feel behind your ear, right behind it. There's no hair there. You have a bald spot. Every one of you. For people who shave their heads, it's very convenient because it would be tough to shave in that little crease. But everybody has a bald area behind their ear. That hair does not grow there. We're going to match that in our hairline. From behind our ear, we're going to leave a little bit of a curve for the bald spot and then angle it back. Now, as long as hair covers this, your person is going to look like they need. You can create many different kinds of styles. You can long hair, short hair, curly hair, whatever you'd like. I think I'm just going to put a ponytail on her. Just so you can see how that looks. So, for the ponytail, first sticking up from the skull, always sticking up from the skull, and from the back, I'm going to figure out where the ponytail would be tied. Then, I'm going to erase the bit of the egg that the hair would cover. To show the direction of the hair, you're going to have some lines that go from the hairline, which you'll erase later, toward where it's tied. Some long, some short. You're going to let it be natural. Back here, same thing, some long, some short from the hairline. Next, some similar type lines from the place where it's gathered. Just outward from that spot. Ooh, weird little hair here. I'll just erase that. Weird little hair. To give that part that's tied. Now, once the hair is tied up, it's going to be a little thicker. I ran off the edge of the sketchbook there. Sorry about that wonky line. And then just let the hair fall to the length that you would like it. Some people have little short ponytails, some people have long ponytails. And once you have that shape that you like, you have some lines growing from the gather, some lines that are at the ends of the hair, and you have a basic ponytail. If you want to put a bow or a scrunchie or something like that, you absolutely can. But you have, ooh, can you see the ends? No, you can't. There we go. You have a basic profile view of the face. At this point, I usually like to look at my overall profile and see if there's anything that I'd like to adjust. Because again, there was no measurements for all of this, so it helps if you're willing to change things. Some of the things that I noticed that I want to adjust on her is I'm going to trim off a little bit of her jaw and chin right here. I'm going to also bring in her neck a little bit on each side. Now I also need to go back and erase the hairline that shows. I just want to let the ends of the hair show where the hair is. So let's see how that adjustment comes out. Well, we did it. We drew a profile view of the face. With full faces, we learned that we can break something down into smaller, easier parts to create a complex picture. We used measurements, and it helped us to put that face together. With profiles, we use that knowledge to turn the view of the face. But we also learned that you have to be willing to adjust things. You have to be willing to try new things out, especially when you're making up a face. You can make this person look how you want it to look. And that is driven by your own personal aesthetic. Feel free to mess around with it. And that's what profiles teach us. I like profiles. Thank you for coming and drawing a profile view of the face with me. Next time we are going to draw a 3/4 view of the face, which is anything from a full face to a profile. So if it's a little bit turned, that's a 3/4. If it's halfway turned, that's 3/4. If it's mostly all the way turned, that's a 3/4. And that's the view of the face that most of us see all the time, but it's also the trickiest one to draw. So I hope you come back and learn the next view of the face with us and have fun drawing. Thank you very much for watching.